Hey. Yeah, you saw that right. We're doing a wrap up. So it's a new year. It's a new month, obviously. That's how it works. I thought that in the beginning of the new year, I thought it would be so interesting for me to do wrap ups of what books I read every month. I don't know how I'm going to structure them. I'm going to see how I want to as I go through the year, because as of right now, this is the very first wrap up that I film ever in my entire life. As the months go on, I will have better stats for you, but this month is going to be like the trial period, if you will. I'm going to tell you about all the books that I read. We are going to be talking about which books I read this month, what I rated them, what my thoughts about them were, and I am sure you have seen many a review, many a wrap up before, so you know how this works. I don't know how this is gonna go. I feel like I'm going to need a lot of water between takes because I feel like I'm going to be talking a lot. I am a yapper. In the month of January, I read 17 books. This was a very good month, honestly. Beginning of the month was very, very good, very 5-star heavy, and then the end of the month was sort of like an average of 3 stars. So I started with Rain and Ruin by J.D. Evans, and this is a part of the Mages of the Wheel. I gave this one a good old 5 stars. It's basically the story about this girl who is wanting to take charge of her family's royal line, the kingdom that they rule over, and no one wants her to rule over the kingdom even though her father is sick. And so she creates this alliance with this man who is a part of the enemy kingdom, and they have gone to war with this specific kingdom that the guy is an heir of. And this book was really, really interesting. It was really, really fun. It's a part of a series, but you don't have to read the series in order, I don't think. I think it's just a bunch of stories set in the same world that follow different characters. And so if you didn't want to continue on with the rest of the series, you definitely don't have to. I think I probably will, just because I really like the way that this book was written. I really loved the main guy character. I said this in my romantasy video as well. If you want any in-depth thoughts on any of these books, they probably are in a video or another, and if the video is not up yet, it will be probably up at some point. Words of affirmation, acts of service king. He was really down horrendous for her. He loved her so much to the point where he was like, I don't care if I'm in the background. If you want to rule over the world, I will stand back behind you and just support you as you do it. So I really, really loved it. In that sense, it was a really, 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 really slow start to the book. I believe I did mention that I was thinking about DNFing it when I first started the book because it was so slow. It felt like I was dragging my feet trying to get through the first 50 pages. So if you start it and you feel like you don't really like it, I definitely recommend getting past page 100 and then seeing how you feel about it, because everything after 100 pages, it's really, really entertaining. Thrown in the Dark by A.K. Caggiano for the same video. I gave Thrown in the Dark 3.5 stars. Like I said, I don't think I'm going to continue on with the rest of the series because it was very lackluster. I felt like it was more trying to be funny than it was trying to be a romantasy or a fantasy. Yes, it is a fantasy, but it felt like more like a Disney movie fantasy. Like, think Rapunzel, where the guy is like just trying to be funny like Flynn. For some reason, that's what I was thinking. I don't know if it's the colors of the cover or the fact that she's a blonde that is making me think that way, but all I know is that I don't see myself continuing on with the rest of the series because it felt like it was more funny than anything, and if I wanted a comedy, then I would read a rom-com, you know? I don't really care for the characters. At least I didn't. Like, it was entertaining, but it's not something that I want to continue on with because I don't feel like I'm gonna be missing out on much if I don't. This Wolf and Kingdom, which I gave to 4.5 stars, and this one is by Tahira Mafi, my queen. This follows this girl who is the queen of the jinn, but she's hidden from everybody and she has to hide from everybody because she would get hunted down because she is the downfall. There's a prophecy that says that she is the downfall of the king of the kingdom that they live in. And this guy who is related to the king, I don't remember if he was a nephew or if he was a grandson. I think he was a grandson. He finds out that this girl is a jinn and he tells his grandpa or his uncle. He's like, hey, I kind of think that she might be jinn, and then people start hunting her down, and he doesn't want her to get hunted down because he's like, I don't understand why she's such a bad thing because she is so soft and she's this beautiful woman, and he falls head over heels. He falls hard from the very beginning. I really, really enjoyed it. It was definitely slowly written, and I feel like the rest of the books that are gonna come in this series are going to be better, because if you read the Shadow Me series, then you know the first book is the slowest book to read, to get through, and then once you get past it, the rest of the series is so good and so plot heavy. So I feel like it's gonna be the same with this one as well. At least I hope so, because the plot is really not all that interesting. I'm really just reading it for the main two characters and how much I adore the both of them and how much I really like the chemistry that's between them, because I feel like they were so good together, and he really just showed how much he adores her by protecting her time and time again. Call It What You Want by Bridget Kemmerer. I never can say her name correctly, and I apologize for that because she is a really just incredible author. She wrote A Curse So Dark and Lonely, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I gave Call It What You Want 4.25 stars, and I read this for a video. I really adored it. It follows this girl, Megan, who is going through a lot because she got caught cheating on the SATs, and now the whole school has shunned her. Nobody talks to her. She only has one friend, and she has family problems. And then we follow this guy, his name is Rob, whose dad was caught embezzling the town's money because he is their, I guess, accountant, and he gets caught doing that. And then to get out of it, he ends up taking a pew to the head, and then he misses and all of it goes wrong, and now Rob and his mother have to take care of him. And we just follow Rob and Megan as they form this beautiful friendship, this beautiful romance, because they are both outcasts and it feels like they have nobody but each other. I gave it 4.25 stars. I really adored it. I loved it so much. I think about this book more often than I thought I would. It is a young adult. I really liked it. I think it was one of the most well-written young adult novels there is, which I shouldn't be surprised about because, like I said, A Curse So Dark and Lonely is one of my favorite books that I've read, and I read it a very long time ago. I still think about it to this day. So I knew that this author was going to deliver. I wasn't really, you know, thinking that this book wasn't going to be something that I enjoy. I obviously picked it for a reason, and when the video comes out, you will see why I picked it. It was a good choice on my part, and I really liked it. Definitely recommend it. 4.25 stars. Such a beautiful young adult romance. Then I read A Deal with the Bossy Devil, which is a romance, and it follows this girl and this guy. This girl on Halloween night basically assaults this guy by smacking him or something, and he goes viral, and he is a CEO and he is the boss of her sister, and because she embarrassed him and lost him a business deal, he fires her sister, and for her to get her sister's job back, she has to be the personal assistant to the guy, and they have to fake date because his parents won't get off his back and he wants them to get off his back, so he pretends to be dating her. It's forced proximity, enemies to lovers, lots of tension, and the girl is like going through all of these emotional and mental things that are basically prohibiting her from reaching her full potential, and everybody knows that except for her. And so when she gets called out on it, a bunch of stuff goes south, and I really liked it. It was really entertaining. I gave it 5 stars. It feels like I read it so long ago. If you are looking for a romance that is forced proximity, enemies to lovers, and lots of longing and yearning, then I definitely recommend it, but definitely check the trigger warnings because it's very adult. Can't help falling in love, which that was a really letdown. That was a real letdown. I gave that one a 3 stars. It is following the story of this girl who is going through a lot, and she's working as a server at this restaurant, and she's horrible at it. And while she's flirting with this guy, her best friends or her friends, popular girls from high school or college, I'm not really sure, they see her there and they're like, oh, why don't you come to this engagement party? We would love to see you. We haven't seen you in forever. And the guy that is sitting at the table that was flirting with her pretends that he's dating her, and so they ended up getting involved, and he is like the son of this multi-millionaire company, and now it's out to everybody that he's dating this girl, and we just follow them from there. And it's a fake engagement. I don't really know how I feel about it. Honestly, in retrospect, like I said, I do think that is worth maybe 2.5 stars because of how much I didn't like it. It felt very insta-lusty, and if you watch this channel a lot or you watch any other of my videos, then you would know that I don't like the insta-lust trope. I'm not a fan of the insta-lust, the insta-love. I like yearning and longing and just pain and suffering. So this one felt like a little rushed for me. I read this one for the tarot video, for the Lovers card, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And honestly, lackluster. Really didn't like it. I don't think I'm going to be thinking about it anytime soon. I read it and I'm glad it's over, but I don't recommend it. It's just like a contemporary romance that's supposed to be cozy and fun and interesting, but instead it's just lacking depth. Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I gave that one a 4 stars. It's basically the story about this cafe where you can go to sit at a table and they pour you a coffee and you drink the coffee, and before it gets cold you have to come back, but that table gets you transported into the past or the future. But the rules is that you have to wait for the ghost that usually sits at that table to go to the restroom for you to be able to take that seat, and then you can only meet with people that have been to that cafe before, and you have to get back before the coffee gets cold. Otherwise you become the ghost that sits at that table all the time and doesn't go anywhere. I really liked it. This one is Japanese literature, and I believe it's just like a work of fiction, like just a fiction, literary fiction, I want to say. It has a little bit of magical realism, and we just watch these people who want to go back to the past or to the future as they choose where to go back to, and you see why they want to go back to that specific time and who they're meeting with and why they're meeting with those specific people. Really liked it. I definitely really enjoy Japanese literature and Korean literature because it feels so different from American literature, which is what I read typically most often. I don't really tend to step out of my comfort zone of reading just American novels and like stuff that's not really translated. I have read a couple of things that have been translated and I always enjoy them, so I don't know why I don't do that more often. I am working on doing that by doing the specific video series that I'm working on. It was really so beautifully done, and some sentences in there are still stuck in my head to this day. I definitely recommend it. I do know that it's very hyped and a lot of people talk about it, but in my opinion I think that's very worthy because honestly it's a good book and it's a good novel and it makes you think a lot, and I like novels that make me think a lot, so this one was definitely a win. And then for the same video I read The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which is just the children's novel. I don't know, now that I've read it, I don't know that I would say it's just a typical children's novel, because to me it speaks to everybody and anybody of any age and any gender and any culture. I think there's something in it for everybody, and I did say that in the video that I read it in as well. I think it's one of the most beautiful works of fiction that I've ever read, even though it's only 80 something pages. It is very interesting, very thought-provoking. I gave it 5 stars, believe it or not. I think it's very deep and it makes you think a lot, and it makes you just reflect on the things that you do in your life. At least it did for me, and I did shed a couple of tears when I read it. I don't know if that's because I was feeling emotional around the time. I do have the French version of this book, which I don't know why I bought the French version, because I don't read French. I mean, I do, but like I don't understand a lot of the stuff that I read in here, because even though I took French for a few years of my life, I don't think I understand it enough to the point where I'm able to understand a book this complicated and this like deep, because there are some words in there that I'm sure I wouldn't know. My vocab is not that great in French, and so I did not read this version. I obviously read the English translated version, which was beautiful, and I definitely recommend it. I think it's one of the books that will make you think, and I think there's something in it for everybody, so 5 stars for that one. I also watched the movie, and the movie is excellent as well. So then I read Better Than Revenge, which is by Casey West, and I gave that one a 3.25 stars. It's a young adult romance, very wholesome. It follows the story of this girl who is dating this guy, and her dream is to work in the podcast for the school, and on her audition day, her boyfriend decides to audition, and he's one of the most popular football players in the school, and he auditions, he gets the part, and instead she gets the researcher spot, which is not what she wanted. She wanted the actual like podcast host, and she doesn't understand why her boyfriend does that, because like imagine your boyfriend takes your dream spot knowing that it's your dream spot, because she practiced with him as well. Like she practiced her whole ideas, the way that she would open the podcast, the way that she would speak on the podcast, what she would think about, what she would talk about in the podcast, and then he goes and uses all her ideas and pretends that they're her own. And so she decides that she wants to get revenge on him by getting him off of the team, or like taking his spot on the football team. And so to practice, she gets his rival to help her practice. Very cutesy, very adorable, very wholesome. I gave it a 3.25 stars because honestly, it was like just a typical YA romance. There wasn't anything special in it. I read it very quickly. I read I Wish You Would by Eva de Laurier. I gave that one a 3.25 stars as well, and that one was for the same video as the Better Than Revenge, and I really liked that one. I think I liked that one a little bit more because it was really entertaining. It's the story of this girl and this guy who are best friends and have been best friends for a very long time, and then something happens over prom and they don't speak for like 3 months, and then on their senior year, their first day of the senior year, they have to go do this thing called senior sunset where they go camp basically, and they have to write their secrets or stuff they regret in a piece of paper, and they put it in this jar. And the girl, because she is a whole mess, she ends up losing like 7 sheets, 7 secrets, and they get out, and her best friend tries to help her through that and tries to help her find them before the other people in the class find them. And she is like this very school-driven, academically driven person, and so she's basically neurotic, and her best friend loves her so much, and we just watch them as they try to figure out things going on in their life. It's a very wholesome young adult novel. It's basically showing you these kids who don't know what they're doing with their life, don't know where they're going with their lives. They still are working through what they want to do after graduation, where they want to go, what they want to do with their lives. I always think that young adult novels are really nice when it comes to that, because for me, at least, reading 3 young adult novels in that specific video that I read those 2 for, I felt like I was back in that headspace of being a young adult, and that was so entertaining to think like when you are a young adult, these things are so important to you and they feel like they're life or death and they take your entire brain. And so reading about them kind of put me back in that headspace, and for that reason I really enjoyed them, because for a book to put you back in that headspace is such a big deal, and that just speaks on how well the book is written. And so I gave that one a 3.25 stars. Very cutesy, very adorable, very young adult, and if you're looking for a clean, wholesome young adult romance, then I definitely recommend that one. I think I liked that one a little bit more than Better Than Revenge, and I think it was paced better as well. The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren, which I'm not going to talk much on. Somebody did bring to my attention something in the last time that I talked about them, and so I'm not going to say much about it. I'm just going to say that it was a 3-star read. It was okay. Watch the video if you want to know my full in-depth thoughts about that. And then I read The Lion Woman of Tehran by Marjan Kamali, which I gave to 4.5 stars. It's this story about this girl who is living in Iran in the time where Iran was going through a lot of political changes and a lot of political unrest and chaos, and she makes this friend who basically changes her entire life, and it's following the story of different generations. It's a multi-generational story that follows 3 different women over the course of a few years, and how the unrest in Iran basically affected their life and affected where their lives went and what people value when it comes to their life, and what women value, what women should value, what a woman living in Iran at that time was expected to do and what she wasn't expected to do, and how they were punished if they did something that the government didn't like. I gave it a 4.5 stars. I really liked it. It's definitely not my favorite Marjan Kamali novel, because that one will always remain the stationery shop. I do say that in the same video that I read this book for. I did say that I prefer the stationery shop a lot more, but this one is a lot more friendship driven. So I feel like if you like a friendship story, and if you like a story that follows kind of like Pachinko, I'll put a picture of that somewhere here. If you like a multi-generational story that follows different women, very, very strong women, and how they contribute to revolution and how some of them even lead revolution, then I think it's such an important novel, especially with everything going on right now in politics as it is. I feel like it's a very important story. I feel like there's something in it for everybody. I really, really like one of our main character. I think her name is Homa. I really like her. I think she is one of my favorite women that I've ever read about, because she's so strong and she's so like hardworking and very strong in her convictions and what she wants to do and how she wants to change the world, and you get to see that physically, not through telling but by showing. So I think it was really, really done very well, and I do recommend it because I think it's very important for the political climate that we are living in right now as well. I think there is something in it. There is something to be said in the way things are happening. The Anthropocene reviewed Essays on a Human-Centered Planet by none other than John Green, and I gave this one a 4.5 stars, but honestly, looking back at it, I would take it down to a 4 stars. I think the 4.5 stars I gave it because I just love and adore John Green as an author. He is one of my favorite humans. He wrote a lot of my favorite novels. I had a phase where I read exclusively just John Green, and I was a ride or die John Green fan. I read every single book that he's ever published. I love the way that he writes characters and the way that he writes young people specifically, because I feel like he has a way of making you feel for these characters and see things from their point of view, to where you don't think that these young people are being dramatic or doing too much or being too crazy. He really sees the way that young people think, and I think I really adored that about his novels when I was younger, and still to this day I have nothing but fond memories of me reading his novels. And so when it came to me reading this book, I had nothing but absolute adoration for this man and reading his thoughts on some things. He is such a genius in the way that he writes things. He words things in a way that I never could think about wording them, and I think that speaks volumes on who he is as an author and as a person. And I think he's so intelligent, and so he's always thinking, at least it feels that way. He thinks about things that I just look at and I don't think anything about, and so reading his thoughts on them is so interesting. And the way that this book was formatted, he's basically reviewing everything as a human on a 1 to 5 star rating. Those things have something to do with humanity, with us as humans, with us as people. And I think he wrote this one, or it was published in 2020, so it has a lot of talk about the whole COVID crisis. And I really liked it. It was really well written. I will say it is very, very slow reading. So if you are not looking for something that is very, very slow, this one is also nonfiction as well. If you don't like nonfiction, and if you don't like anything that's too slow, then I don't think this one is the one for you. I would skip it. I do think that it's probably better listened to as an audiobook, and had I had the choice, I probably would have listened to it on audiobook, because I think listening to him reading his thoughts would probably have hit more. But I still really enjoyed reading the book, and I think it's a very beautifully done book, and I'm glad that I finally read it. Then I read You, the Story, A Writer's Guide to Craft Through Memory by Ruta Sepetys, which is the author of Between Shades of Grey, Fountains of Silence, Salt to the Sea, I think. She is a historical fiction author. I adore her novels so incredibly much. She is one of my favorite authors, I would say, when it comes to that genre specifically. I think the very first historical fiction novel that I've ever read was by her, so I have a very fond attachment to her writing style. I gave this one a 4 stars because it's a nonfiction as well, and it's basically about her and how she approaches novel writing. And not to say that I'm going to be writing a novel anytime soon, but as a reader, I feel like it's always a common thing. It goes hand in hand, of being a reader and wanting to write your own novel. And I have always wanted to write a novel since I was like, I want to say maybe 12 or 13 years old. I've always been interested in writing, and I feel like this year I really want to actually put in the effort to actually write and do something when it comes to that desire that I have. So I decided to actually look into the craft of writing and see what people are saying about it, specifically my favorite authors, what they have to say about it. I do follow this YouTuber. Her name is Katytastic. I will link her channel down below. She has amazing writing resources where she goes through her process of how she outlines a book, what she writes about, how she comes with ideas, how she comes up with ideas, how she comes up with characters. And so hand in hand with that, I felt like reading this book was a good way of me trying to see different ideas from different people and seeing which one works for me, because I think it's all about practice and how you put these things into practice. And so reading this one was really, really entertaining. She gave you homework throughout some of the chapters. I will definitely be looking back at this. I feel like as I begin to write, or if I begin to write, then I think it would be interesting to go back through the exercises that she gives you and actually do them and see where that leads you, because she has very interesting ideas, and I definitely recommend anything that she's ever written. I adore her as a person, I adore her writing, and I think she is one of the most talented people when it comes to actually writing. The Last Pomegranate Tree by, oh Lord, I'm gonna put the name somewhere on the screen because I can't say it. This was a translated work. I gave 4 stars. I don't know how I feel about it, because if you watch the video, I think, which will come somewhere, I don't think it's published yet on this channel, I really struggled getting into this book. It is very very thought-provoking, very deep, very philosophical, to the point where sometimes it comes across as pretentious. I have never read a novel like this ever in my life, I don't think. I think it comes across in the video how much I struggled with it, and even though I struggled with it, I still really enjoyed it. I think it's a very important story to tell. It's basically about this man who is imprisoned for 21 years, and we open the book with him getting released, and he is looking for his son, and his son is either dead or alive, we don't know. And we follow his story as he hears about his son from different people and the life that his son is living, and or lived, I guess, and how people affect each other and how war affects people and how destruction is so easily done, but rebuilding is so hard. And though I struggled, I really do think it's a beautiful, gorgeous work of fiction. I think it's one of the most thought-provoking books that I've read this month, and I do think I'm going to be thinking about it a lot. I really liked it because I have never read anything like it, and though I struggled, I do think I recommend it if you like a thinking, thought-provoking book. Yeah. That's all I'm gonna say on that. All About Love, New Visions by Bell Hooks, which I gave to 4.5 stars. That book is so crazy. It's so crazy. If you have seen the cover, if you see the cover, I'm sure you will say that you have seen this at least once or twice in your life somewhere. A lot of people talk about this book. A lot of people love this book and they adore it, and they say that it speaks about love in a very different way than other books talk about it. This one is a nonfiction, and it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. If you don't have time to read it, please listen to the audiobook because it's like 5.5 hours. It's very quick, a very quick read. The book is actually like 230 something pages. I really liked it. I liked the way that it was written. A lot of lines in there make you think a lot. I underlined a lot of sentences in that book. I will be thinking about it for a very long time. I think there's something in it for everybody, and I do think it could change your mind and your thought process when it comes to love if you read this book, because it speaks about it in such a different way than what I've heard other people speak about it, and beautiful. Definitely recommend it. 4.5 stars. I honestly have nothing but good things to say about that book. First of all, it's quick. Second of all, it's beautiful and thought-provoking. And third of all, it's just so well written, and it doesn't get boring, because I feel like it speaks on love from so many different dimensions that if you don't like one chapter, I think the next chapter will probably catch your attention. So very good. I probably will be reading it again at some point in my life, I think. We finished the month when I read Spy Family Volume 13, and I gave this one 5 stars. This is a manga series, an anime as well, following the story of Lloyd and Yor, who are married to each other. Yor is an assassin and Lloyd is a spy, and neither of them knows about each other's secret identities. They're married for convenience, and they adopt this girl. Her name is Anya, and she is a mind reader, and she is the only one that knows everything going on in between the two parents. She knows their like secret identities, and she knows what they're thinking at all times, but they don't know that she's a mind reader, and it's so good. It's so good. It might be propaganda to get people to have more kids in Japan because of the declining birth rate. I would absolutely be having kids because of this novel, because it's so cute. Every time I read a manga volume, I just find myself giggling and laughing out loud. It's so funny and so entertaining, and the art style is so good, and I think it really makes up for all the pain that Jujutsu Kaisen made me feel, because at some point I was co-reading them, and so all the pain that Jujutsu Kaisen would make me feel, Spy Family would take away. And also the anime is so good as well. If you don't have enough time to read the mangas, then I think you should watch the anime, because even the art style of the anime is so good. And Anya is one of my favorite characters ever. Across all the fictional characters that I know, she is up there because she's so hysterical, and she has these faces that she makes. She is so funny and she's so adorable, and I just really, really love the family, and I love the things that happen because they're so ridiculous and so funny and so over the top that you can't help but laugh. So 5 stars, a great way to end the month. As I'm filming this right now, it is the 25th, so I will probably be reading maybe a couple more books, but I will put that in the February wrap up. Those are all the books that I read for the month of January. I think it was a very, very like good reading month. I read a lot of books, filmed a lot of videos. I can't wait for you guys to see them. Let me know how many books you read this month down below. Let me know if you've read any of these books that I talked about down below and what your thoughts and opinions are on them. Let me know if you have any recommendations for me to read next month, and let me know if you like the wrap-ups, because I have never filmed a wrap-up before. This is a very first for me, so I'm very excited, and I hope that they only get better as the months go on. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have the very best day. Treat yourself to something nice, and I'll see you guys again next week with another video. Goodbye!